There is a specific kind of silence that happens in a room right before someone says something that changes everything. It's not loud. It doesn't announce itself. But if you're paying close enough attention, you feel it. And if you watch the Run BTS 2.0 prologue carefully, you probably felt something like that when the camera landed on Jimin. Not because he said anything shocking. Not because there was drama. But because something about him was simply, unmistakably different. And once you notice it, you cannot unsee it. ARMY have been talking about it since the prologue dropped on April 7th, 2026. Social media threads, fan cams, reaction videos, comment sections. Everyone is pointing at the same thing without always being able to put it into words. There's something different about Jimin. His energy feels shifted. The way he carries himself in that room feels like someone who has gone somewhere far, come back, and quietly decided to take up more space. Not in an aggressive way, in the most natural, most earned way possible. And that's exactly what makes it so worth talking about. Because here's the thing about ParkJimin that casual fans might not fully appreciate. For most of BTS's career, Jimin has been one of the most visually captivating, emotionally resonant, and technically gifted performers in the group. He has topped Billboard charts as a solo artist. He has sold out arenas. He has made people cry with a single note. He has made people stop breathing mid-performance, just from the way he moves across a stage. By every measurable standard, ParkJimin is one of the most impactful artists of his generation. And yet, for much of that journey, the Jimin behind all of that was also someone quietly at war with himself. Someone who never quite felt ready. Someone who walked into every room wondering whether he was doing enough, whether he was good enough, whether the person the world saw on stage matched the person he felt like in private. The gap between Jimin the performer and Jimin the person was something you could feel if you watched him long enough. A subtle hesitation here. A moment of holding back there. A brightness that was absolutely real, but also sometimes felt like it was working a little too hard. That version of Jimin was never fake. That version of Jimin was always genuine. But it was also a version of Jimin who was still in the middle of becoming something. And what Run BTS 2.0 is showing us, even in just its opening prologue, is what that something turned out to be. The Jimin sitting in that brainstorming session is not performing ease. He is not putting on a relaxed front for the cameras. He actually looks like someone who has set down a weight he had been carrying for a very long time. And once you understand the full journey that brought him to that moment, everything about the way he shows up in Run BTS 2.0 starts to make complete sense. So let's talk about it properly. Let's go all the way back to where this transformation actually began. To understand why Jimin looks different in Run BTS 2.0, we need to go back a little. We need to return to the point where everything started over. Jimin entered the military on December 12, 2023, alongside Jungkook. That wasn't an easy moment. In his final live stream before enlisting, Jimin said he came early because he wanted to greet ARMY before he left. He said he felt sad. He said enlisting didn't really feel real until his head was shaved. But at the same time, he said something important, something whose meaning we can now see far more clearly. Jimin said that enlisting together with Jungkook gave him reassurance. We will do what we need to do and come back. Simple words, but they carried real weight. And true to his word, Jimin came back. On June 11th, 2025, he was discharged alongside Jungkook and Yeonkyun. The photos from that day immediately drew attention from fans and media alike. Not because anything dramatic happened. Quite the opposite. What people noticed was the way he stood. His shoulders looked more defined. His posture was steadier. But the biggest change wasn't physical. The biggest change was in his expression. There was a calm there that hadn't always been visible in the Jimin we knew before. Media outlets took note of it too. Reports described Jimin as appearing leaner yet more defined, with a more mature physical presence, without losing the agility that has always defined his performance style as a dancer. But beyond the physical, what had truly changed was something deeper. Something that only became fully visible once BTS came back as a group, and once Run BTS 2.0 finally aired. In the prologue episode of Run BTS 2.0 that dropped on April 7th, 2026, all 7 members gathered to brainstorm ideas for the new format of their show. On the surface, it looked like a simple planning meeting. 7 guys sitting around, throwing out ideas, laughing at each other, arguing gently about what direction their beloved variety show should go in. Nothing extraordinary about the setup. But if you watched it closely, really closely, you started to notice things. The dynamic in that room was different from what we had seen in older run BTS content. 3 years is a long time. 3 years of military service, of living in completely different environments, of growing up in ways that have nothing to do with cameras or stages or choreography. And now here they were again, all 7 of them, trying to figure out what it means to be BTS in a room together in 2026. The energy was warm but also slightly new. Like old friends who love each other deeply but are also quietly rediscovering each other at the same time. And in the middle of all of that, Jimin made his move. He suggested filming a video at RM's new house, the one fans had briefly glimpsed during the New Year's Eve livestream. It sounds simple, but think about what that moment actually represented. Jimin was the one who spoke up. Jimin was the one who threw an idea into the room without overthinking it, without hedging, without the kind of careful setup that someone who is second-guessing themselves would use. He just said it. Direct, confident, almost casual. RM immediately shut it down and said it would be a disaster. The whole room erupted, and Jimin laughed along with everyone else, completely unbothered by the rejection. That right there is the detail that so many people missed. Because the old Jimin, the Jimin who used to carry the weight of everyone's expectations including his own, would have felt that rejection differently. There would have been a flicker, a small retreat, something almost invisible, but there if you knew where to look. This time there was nothing like that. Just laughter. Pure, easy, unbothered laughter from someone who pitched an idea, got told no, and found the whole thing genuinely funny. That is not a small thing. That is actually everything. That single moment in the Run BTS 2.0 prologue tells you more about who ParkJimin has become than 100 performance highlights ever could. Because performances can be rehearsed. Stage presence can be trained. But the way someone reacts when their idea gets rejected in a room full of their peers, that is completely unscripted. That is who you actually are. And who Jimin actually is, right now in 2026, is someone who has finally made peace with himself. To understand how far that transformation goes, we need to talk about who Jimin was before. ParkJimin is extraordinary, but he has always been someone who carried the heavy weight of the standards he set for himself. Since the early days of BTS, Jimin has been known as a perfectionist who was never quite satisfied with his own results. In an interview with Rolling Stone conducted at HYBE's Seoul headquarters in early 2026, Jimin said honestly, "I'm not sure if I'd call myself a perfectionist. Everyone has the desire to do well, and I have that as well. So to let go of that desire feels to me like wanting to quit altogether. So I don't know if I'll ever be able to let go." That quote matters, because behind the mochi smile that has been melting ARMY's hearts for years, there has always been someone who struggled deeply with the standards he imposed on himself. The Jimin we know is the Jimin who joined BTS last, whose background was in modern dance rather than singing. The Jimin who once said that when they debuted, he didn't feel ready or confident. The Jimin who, even after making history as the first Korean solo artist to reach #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 with Like Crazy, still spoke as if he had more to prove. But look at Jimin now. Look at how the journey of the past few years has reshaped the way he sees himself. Before enlisting, Jimin had already lived through a remarkable solo era. His album Face made him the first Korean solo artist to top the Billboard Hot 100. That's not a small achievement. That's a milestone that even Jimin himself never saw coming. In his Rolling Stone interview, when asked whether he had anticipated his career growing that quickly, Jimin answered simply, "I never expected it at all. I am sincerely grateful for the response." There's genuine humility in those words. But there's also something more important. A Jimin who now knows exactly how far his talent can take him. And then the military came. 2 years inside. 2 years of strict routine. Far from the spotlight, far from the stage, far from everything that had shaped his identity as an artist. In a letter he wrote during his service, Jimin described his days as repetitive, but with a sense of calm. That sentence says a lot. The calm he was describing wasn't boredom. It was the kind of calm that comes from discipline, from routine, from time that finally gave him space to stop for a moment and look honestly inward. And somewhere in that quiet, Jimin found something. He found the courage to stop being afraid. The evidence is in the Arirang album itself. Jimin contributed to the writing of 2 songs. They Don't Know About Us, and into the sun. This isn't just a name listed in the credits. This is proof of someone who has let go of his fear. Jimin told Rolling Stone about how They Don't Know About Us was born from a late-night conversation with RM. The initial idea started from a very personal phrase, "You make me weak," because that's what Jimin wanted to say to the fans. That the enormous love from ARMY, without anyone realizing it, sometimes doesn't leave room for BTS to grow. It was a bold thought, an honest one, and nothing like the Jimin who used to be so careful with every word. And this is the part that ARMY really needs to understand. Jimin looks different now not because something is wrong. Jimin looks different now because he has been through a long process of finding himself. In his Rolling Stone feature, he said something that moved a lot of people. He said, "My teammates are all so amazing, so I feel the need to improve my worth as a fellow member." That is Jimin, not the Jimin who lacks confidence, but the Jimin who keeps pushing himself, not from fear, but from a genuine love for his group. And when you see that energy carry over into Run BTS 2.0, suddenly everything makes sense. In the prologue episode, Jimin wasn't quietly sitting back and observing. He was active. He was pitching ideas, even wild ones like the whole RM's house suggestion. He was laughing in a way that felt freer than before. There was a lightness to him that didn't always show up in spaces like that. And that's not a coincidence. That is the result of a long journey. We also can't talk about the change in Jimin without talking about what he showed on stage during the Arirang World Tour. Because if the Run BTS 2.0 prologue showed us the offstage Jimin, Tokyo Dome showed us what happens when that same energy, that same settled, unbothered, fully arrived version of ParkJimin meets a 55,000-person crowd that has been waiting 8 years to see him. The answer is something that is genuinely hard to put into words. BTS arrived at Tokyo Dome on April 17th and 18th, 2026 for the first international leg of the Arirang World Tour. This was not just any concert stop. Japan holds a deeply specific place in BTS's history. They were embraced by Japanese fans long before the rest of the world caught up. Tokyo Dome itself is one of the most iconic venues in Asia, and the last time BTS stood on that stage was back in 2019. 7 years. For a group that spent much of that gap in military service, returning to Tokyo Dome wasn't just a concert. It was a statement. It was proof that everything they had built, everything they had sacrificed, and everything they had grown into was still standing. And Jimin walked onto that stage like he knew exactly what it meant. He arrived with longer blonde hair than at the Goyang concerts, giving him a visual that immediately reminded people of a comic book protagonist. Sharp, striking, completely commanding. But the look was just the surface. What happened when the music started was something else entirely. During Fire, even in the middle of intensely demanding choreography with heavy breathing and constant movement, Jimin filled Tokyo Dome with explosive high notes that hit like a physical force. There was zero compromise, not a single moment where he chose comfort over commitment. Everything he had, every ounce of the stamina and artistry that 2 years of military discipline had sharpened even further, came pouring out onto that stage. Fans who were watching the live cinema screening in theaters around the world described feeling the energy through the screen. That is not a common thing. That is the kind of performance that transcends the medium it's being delivered through. When Crystal Snow appeared as an unannounced song on the first night, the reaction inside Tokyo Dome was immediate and overwhelming. Jimin sang it with a tenderness and depth that made the 55,000 people in that arena go completely still in the best possible way. Korean media described his voice as having a stardust tone. Japanese fans who had not seen him perform live in 8 years were visibly moved, singing along to every lyric from a song released nearly a decade ago as if no time had passed at all. But the moment that stayed with people longest wasn't from any song. It was quieter than that. It was Jimin standing at the front of the stage, holding a handwritten letter, reading it out loud in Japanese. He told the crowd he was truly happy to meet them again after such a long time. He told them that being able to return to Tokyo Dome after 8 years was entirely because of their support. And then, in the most Jimin way imaginable, he left a spoiler that made the entire arena erupt, leaving everyone wondering whether that night was truly the last or whether there was still so much more to come. That is Jimin in 2026. Someone who can fill a stadium with emotion, but also someone who can make an entire room laugh with a wild idea in the Run BTS 2.0 prologue. Someone who has moved so far beyond his own fears that he now stands on stage and in front of cameras with a confidence built not from the validation of others, but from something far more solid inside himself. So when ARMY says Jimin looks different, they're right. Jimin is different. But different doesn't mean he's become someone else. Different here means more complete, more honest with himself, more courageous, lighter, more Jimin than any version of Jimin we have ever known before. And Run BTS 2.0 has only just begun. The first full episode doesn't drop until April 23rd, 2026, which means we've only seen the very first layer of what is shaping up to be one of the most compelling eras in ParkJimin's career. We don't yet know what games he'll play. We don't know what punishments he'll end up with. We don't know what spontaneous moments will reveal the sides of Jimin that usually stay hidden behind all that discipline and dedication. But one thing is already clear even from that short prologue. The Jimin who came back to Run BTS 2.0 is a Jimin who is no longer carrying the weight he used to. He's still a perfectionist on stage. He's still someone who will never stop pushing himself to be better. But off stage, in spaces like Run BTS, Jimin now looks like someone who can finally breathe easy. And for ARMY, that is a moment genuinely worth celebrating. Not because Jimin has changed into a different person, but because ParkJimin, after everything he has been through, has finally found the best version of himself. And that version is now right in front of all of us, ready to make the BTS 2.0 era something none of us will ever forget.